The auction hall reeked of desperation and stale air. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species packed the viewing platforms, their eyes gleaming with cold calculation as they examined the merchandise on display. The station existed in the lawless fringe of the galaxy, far from the watchful eyes of the Galactic Council. Here, the pretense of civilization fell away, revealing the ugly truth that slavery still thrived in the shadows. On the auction block stood a sight that drew more sneers than bids. Lyra clutched her daughter Kira against her chest, her arms wrapped protectively around the small child who buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Lyra belonged to the Venlari species, known throughout the galaxy for their stunning bioluminescent wings that could shimmer in colors no other race could produce. Those wings were supposed to be their pride, their identity, their beauty. But Lyra's wings were ruined. Great tears ran through the delicate membranes, leaving jagged scars that spoke of violence and cruelty. The left wing hung at an awkward angle, clearly broken and healed incorrectly. The right wing had holes burned through it, the edges blackened and dead. When she moved, even slightly, pain flashed across her face. The wings that should have glowed with soft light remained dim and lifeless. The auctioneer, a hulking Kralix with 4 arms and scales like rusted metal, gestured irritably at the pair. His voice boomed through the translation devices everyone wore, carrying his words in 100 languages simultaneously. 1 lot, Venlari female with spawn. The female has experience in numerical work. The spawn is healthy and young. Starting bid, 5,000 credits. Silence greeted his words. Someone in the crowd laughed, a harsh barking sound that echoed through the hall. Lyra flinched and held Kira tighter. The little girl whimpered but did not look up. Come now, surely someone needs workers. 4,000 credits. More silence. A Thorian merchant made a rude gesture and turned away. His translator picked up his words clearly. Why would I pay for broken goods? She cannot even fly. Worthless. The auctioneer's scales darkened with frustration. 3,000 credits. A bargain for 2 workers. She can barely stand, called out another voice. Look at her. She is dying on her feet. The spawn will be orphaned within a cycle. Not worth the food to keep them. Lyra's legs trembled but she refused to fall. She had been standing on this block for nearly an hour while other slaves were sold around her. Each time her turn came, the bidding fell silent. She understood their language well enough to know what they said about her. Broken. Worthless. Damaged goods. She had heard it all before from her previous masters, the ones who had torn her wings and beaten her when she could not work fast enough. But she would not let them see her cry. She had no tears left anyway. All that mattered was Kira. Her daughter was only 5 cycles old, too young to understand the horror of their situation. Lyra whispered softly in Kira's ear, old lullabies from their homeworld, trying to block out the cruel voices. 2,000 credits. Final offer before I move to the next lot. The crowd remained still. Some had already begun to leave, bored with the lack of bidding. The auctioneer raised one massive arm, ready to strike his gavel and dismiss them. A voice cut through the noise, speaking the common trade language with a strange accent. I will pay the 2,000. Every head turned. The crowd parted slightly to reveal a human making his way toward the platform. He was not particularly tall or impressive by galactic standards. Humans rarely were. He wore simple work clothes, a worn jacket over practical pants and boots. His dark hair was slightly too long and his face showed the beginning of a beard. His eyes were brown and tired, the eyes of someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness. The auctioneer's expression shifted to something like surprise. The human bids 2,000 credits. Going once. Several species in the crowd made sounds of disgust. A Vortilian near the front called out mockingly. The human wants broken merchandise. How fitting. Humans collect strays like some collect shiny stones. The human did not respond to the insult. He simply walked forward, his datapad already out to transfer the credits. His face remained calm, almost blank, but his hands were clenched tight at his sides. Going twice. Sold to the human for 2,000 credits. The transaction completed quickly. Electronic credits transferred from one account to another, ownership records updated in the station's database, and just like that, Lyra and Kira belonged to this stranger. The auctioneer attached electronic collars around both their necks, the devices that would shock them if they tried to run or disobey direct orders. The human accepted the control device without a word. As he approached the platform, Lyra instinctively backed away. She had learned to fear that moment when a new master came to claim his property. That was when the worst usually happened, when they demonstrated their power and reminded her of her place. She positioned Kira behind her own body, ready to take whatever violence came. But the human stopped several feet away. He did not reach for them. He did not grab or shout or strike. Instead, he looked directly at Lyra's face, meeting her eyes with an expression she could not quite read. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly. His voice was gentle, almost soft. Lyra nodded once, not trusting her voice. "Good. My ship is docked in Bay 17. It is not far. Can you make it that distance?" Another nod. Confusion warred with fear in her mind. Why was he asking permission? Masters did not ask. They commanded. The human turned and began walking toward the exit. He did not pull on the collar control or order them to follow. He simply walked, his pace slow and measured. Lyra hesitated, then took one step, then another. Kira clutched her hand tightly as they followed this strange human through the crowd. People stared as they passed. Some made crude comments about what the human planned to do with his new purchases. Others laughed at the sight of a human with such worthless slaves. The human ignored them all, his eyes fixed ahead, his jaw set in a hard line. They walked through the station corridors in silence. Lyra's wings ached with every step and her legs felt like they might collapse at any moment, but she forced herself to keep moving. Whatever this human wanted, she would face it. She had survived this long. She would survive whatever came next. When they reached Bay 17, the human stopped at a battered cargo ship. The name Wayward Star was painted on the side in faded letters. He opened the airlock and gestured for them to enter first. Inside, the ship was small but clean. The human sealed the airlock behind them and stood there for a moment, his hand resting on the control device for their collars. Lyra held her breath. Then he looked down at Kira for the first time, really looked at her. The little girl peeked out from behind her mother's legs with wide, frightened eyes. "What are your names?" the human asked softly. Lyra's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I am Lyra. This is Kira." The human nodded slowly. "I am Ben Carter. You are safe now. I promise you that. No one will hurt you on this ship." Lyra did not believe him. She had heard promises before and they always turned to lies. But she said nothing. She simply held Kira close and waited to see what would happen next. Ben led them deeper into the ship, past the cargo bay and through a narrow corridor. Lyra's heart pounded with every step. She knew what came next. Masters always took their property to private quarters first. They wanted to establish control, to make clear who held the power. She tightened her grip on Kira's hand and prepared herself for whatever horror awaited. But when Ben opened a door, Lyra found herself staring at something she had not expected. It was a small cabin, modest and plain, but it had 2 actual beds with clean sheets. There was a small desk, a storage locker, and a porthole showing the stars outside. The room smelled clean, like soap and recycled air, not like the filth and fear of the slave pens. "This is yours," Ben said simply. He stepped back into the hallway, keeping distance between them. "The bathroom is through that door. There are towels and basic supplies. The beds have fresh blankets." Lyra stared at him, unable to process his words. Masters did not give slaves private rooms. Slaves slept on floors, in corners, and cargo holds. They certainly did not get beds or bathrooms of their own. "I do not understand," she whispered. Ben ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "I know this is confusing. Just rest for now. I will bring food in a few minutes. The door locks from the inside if you want privacy." He left before she could respond, the door sliding shut behind him. Lyra stood frozen in the middle of the room, Kira still pressed against her side. The collar around her neck felt heavy, a constant reminder of what she was. Property. "Mama, there are beds," Kira said softly, her voice filled with wonder. The child had never slept in a real bed in her short life. "Do not touch anything," Lyra warned. "This might be a test. Masters sometimes do this. They give comfort, then punish you for accepting it." But Kira was 5 cycles old and exhausted. She climbed onto one of the beds and curled up, her eyes already closing. Lyra wanted to pull her down, to make her sleep on the floor where it was safer, but she could not bring herself to do it. Let the child have a moment of comfort, even if punishment came later. True to his word, Ben returned within minutes carrying a tray of food. He knocked on the door first, waiting for permission to enter. Lyra found this strange too. Masters did not knock on doors. When she finally opened it, Ben set the tray on the desk and stepped back again, maintaining that careful distance. "It is nothing fancy," he said. "Protein rations, vegetable paste, some fruit. I was not sure what Venlari eat, so I brought a variety. There is water and some juice for the little one." Lyra looked at the food. It was more than she had seen in weeks. Her last masters fed her scraps, barely enough to keep her alive. Why are you doing this? Ben was quiet for a moment. Because you are hungry. Because your daughter is hungry. Because it is the right thing to do. Masters do not care about right things. I am not your master. Ben reached into his jacket and pulled out a datapad. I have something to show you, but I need you to trust me for just a minute. Can you do that? Trust. The word felt foreign on Lyra's tongue. She had not trusted anyone in so long. But something in Ben's tired eyes made her nod slowly. He pulled up documents on the datapad, official-looking papers with seals and signatures. These are freedom papers. Under human law, slavery is illegal. Any person who reaches human territory or comes under human protection is automatically free. I filed these documents the moment we left the auction. According to Earth's government and the Human Council, you and Kira are no longer slaves. You are free citizens. Lyra felt the room spin. That is not possible. The collars. Ben held up the control device. Without hesitation, he dropped it on the floor and crushed it under his boot. The electronic collars around Lyra and Kira's necks beeped once, then went dark and fell away. The weight she had carried for so long suddenly vanished. I bought you to free you, Ben said quietly. Not to own you. I am sorry I had to go through the auction at all, but it was the only legal way to get you out of there under station law. Lyra's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, her damaged wings spreading awkwardly behind her. Kira woke up and called out in alarm, but Lyra could not speak. She could only stare at the dead collar on the floor. Ben crouched down, still keeping his distance. I know you have no reason to believe me. I know trust has to be earned. But I swear to you on everything I hold sacred, you are safe here. Both of you. Why? The word came out as a sob. Why would you do this? Ben's expression darkened with old pain. I had a sister. Her name was Sarah. She was 20 years old when Earth first made contact with the galaxy. She was so excited about seeing the stars. She took a job on a transport ship heading to the frontier. He paused, his jaw tight. The ship was attacked by raiders. Most of the crew was killed. Sarah and a few others were taken. We never found her. My family searched for years. We spent everything we had trying to track her down. But the galaxy is big and the slave trade is good at hiding people. Lyra understood then. She saw it in his eyes, the same grief she carried. You think she is dead? I know she is. It has been 10 years. Even if she survived the first years, the conditions. Ben shook his head. I stopped looking for her 5 years ago. But I swore that if I ever had the chance to help someone else, someone trapped like she was, I would do it. So when I saw you on that auction block, saw them calling you worthless and broken, I knew I had to try. Kira climbed down from the bed and walked over to Ben. The child had no fear, only curiosity. Are you a good man? Ben smiled sadly. I try to be, little one. I do not always succeed, but I try. Mama says good men do not exist in the stars. Your mama has seen a lot of bad things. She has every reason to think that. But I promise you there are still some good people out there. Not many maybe, but some. Over the next few days, a careful routine developed aboard the wayward star. Ben kept his distance, never entering their cabin without permission, never touching them without asking first. He brought food 3 times a day and showed Lyra where the kitchen was so she could get water or snacks whenever she wanted. He gave Kira some old datapads loaded with children's learning programs and stories. Lyra remained wary, watching for the trap she was sure would spring eventually. But as days turned into a week, nothing bad happened. Ben piloted the ship toward human territory, working his cargo routes and leaving them alone unless they sought him out. Kira, with the resilience of the young, began to warm to Ben quickly. She would sit in the cockpit doorway and watch him work, asking endless questions about the stars and ships and navigation. Ben answered every question with patience, explaining things in simple terms she could understand. One evening, Lyra found Ben in the small galley making dinner. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. She noticed he often looked tired, like he did not sleep well. Your wings hurt you constantly, do not they? He asked without looking up from the food he was preparing. Lyra stiffened. She had tried to hide the pain, but apparently not well enough. It does not matter. It matters. I know a medical station about 3 days from here. They have good doctors, some of the best in this sector. They could look at your wings, maybe help with the pain. Fear shot through her. No. No doctors. Ben immediately held up his hands. Okay. No doctors. I will not force you. I just wanted you to know the option exists if you ever change your mind. He did not bring it up again. He did not push or insist or demand. He simply respected her choice, and that alone was more surprising than anything else he had done. Lyra began to realize that maybe, just maybe, Ben Carter actually meant what he said. Maybe he really did want to help them. Maybe, for the first time in years, they truly were safe. 3 weeks into their journey, Lyra stood in the doorway of the cockpit, watching Ben work through a complicated navigation problem. Numbers scrolled across multiple screens, showing fuel consumption rates, cargo weight distributions, and optimal route calculations. She had been watching him struggle with the math for nearly an hour. "You are using the wrong formula," she said quietly. Ben looked up, surprised. "What?" "The cargo weight distribution. You need to account for the gravitational variance when passing near the binary star system. Your current calculation will put too much strain on the port engines." Ben stared at her, then at the screens. "I did not know you understood navigation." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes scanning the numbers with practiced ease. "I do not understand navigation. But I understand mathematics. The formulas are just logic problems with numbers. Can you show me what I am doing wrong?" She hesitated, old fears rising up. Slaves who showed intelligence often faced punishment. Masters did not like property that was smarter than them. But Ben simply waited, his expression open and curious, not threatened. Slowly, Lyra moved to the console and began pointing out the errors in his calculations. Within 10 minutes, she had corrected his course, saving him 3 days of travel time and nearly 2,000 credits in fuel costs. Ben leaned back in his chair, shaking his head in amazement. "Where did you learn to do that?" "I was an accountant on my homeworld," Lyra said softly, "before the slavers came. I worked for a large shipping company, managing their financial records and optimizing their transport costs. I was good at my job. I had a small home, a garden, a life." Her voice cracked slightly. "Then raiders attacked our settlement. They killed anyone who fought back. They took those of us who looked valuable. I managed to hide Kira during the attack, but they found us both eventually." Ben was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry. You should never have lost that life." "Sorry does not change anything." "No, it does not. But maybe something else can." Ben pulled up a new screen on the console. "I have been running this cargo business for 5 years. I am a decent pilot and I know my way around a ship, but I am terrible at the financial side. I lose money on routes I should profit from. I miscalculate fuel costs. I am always one bad deal away from going broke." He looked at her directly. "I could use a partner. Someone who actually knows what they are doing with numbers and business calculations. If you are interested." "A partner?" Lyra could not hide her disbelief. "You mean an employee?" "No. I mean a partner. Equal split on the profits after expenses. You would handle the financial planning, route optimization, and contract negotiations. I would handle the flying and ship maintenance. We would make decisions together." "Why would you give me half of everything?" "Because you would be doing half the work. More than half, probably. Look, I know you have no reason to trust me. I know you think I am going to turn on you somehow. But I need help and you need a future. This could be good for both of us." Lyra wanted to refuse. Accepting would mean trusting him completely, and trust was dangerous. But she also thought about Kira, about giving her daughter a chance at a real life instead of running and hiding forever. She thought about having purpose again, about using the skills she had spent years developing. "I will try it," she said finally. "But if you attempt to cheat me, I will know. I am very good with numbers." Ben smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. "I believe you." Over the next month, the Wayward Star became a different kind of ship. Lyra took over the financial systems completely, and within days she had reorganized everything. She found billing errors going back years, uncollected payments Ben had forgotten about, and inefficient routes he had been running out of habit. She renegotiated 3 major contracts, increasing their payment rates by 20%. Their profit margins tripled within the first month. Ben stopped looking so tired and stressed. Kira had new clothes and better food. For the first time since her capture, Lyra felt something like hope growing in her chest. But peace never lasted long in the frontier territories. They docked at Station Trava to deliver a cargo load when trouble found them. A Thorian cargo hauler named Grath spotted them in the station market. Lyra recognized him immediately from the auction, one of the ones who had laughed and called her worthless. His small eyes widened with malicious delight when he saw her. Well, the broken Vinlari and her spawn. Still with the human? Grath's translator made his voice sound oily and smug. "You know she is escaped property, human. There is a bounty for returning runaways." Ben stepped between Grath and Lyra, his body language suddenly hard and dangerous. She is not escaped property. She is a free citizen under human law and my business partner. Human law means nothing out here. She belongs to the auction house until her contract is fulfilled. You stole her. I paid for her freedom legally. Graff laughed, a wet gurgling sound. We will see what station security thinks. He pulled out a communicator and made a call before Ben could stop him. Within minutes, 4 security officers surrounded them. The lead officer, a Vortillian with gray skin and too many teeth, looked over Ben's documents with obvious skepticism. These human papers mean nothing on this station, the officer said. The auction house has filed a complaint. They say this human removed property without proper transfer of ownership. That is a lie, Ben said firmly. I have the transaction records. I paid the full asking price. The ownership was legally transferred. The auction house claims the sale was invalid because you misrepresented your intentions. They want the property returned and your cargo license revoked. Her name is Lyra. Her daughter's name is Kira. They are not property. More security arrived. A crowd began to gather, attracted by the commotion. Lyra felt panic rising in her chest. She could see where this was going. Station security would side with the auction house because they took bribes. Ben would be arrested or banned from the station. She and Kira would be dragged back to the auction block, and this time no one would bid on them at all. They would be disposed of like garbage. Ben pulled out his communicator. I am contacting the human delegation on this station. I am also filing an official complaint with the Galactic Council about illegal slavery operations. The Vortillian officer's expression darkened. You do not want to make this a diplomatic incident, human? Then do not force me to. I have every right to file complaints about criminal activity. That auction was trafficking sentient beings in violation of council law. I have recordings and documentation. Do you really want me to send that to the council? The crowd muttered. Other humans in the market began moving closer, showing solidarity. The Vortillian officer looked uncertain now, recognizing that this could escalate badly. I will need statements from all parties, the officer said finally, including the Venlari. Everyone turned to look at Lyra. She stood frozen, Kira clutched against her side. Speaking up meant drawing attention. It meant making herself a target. It meant risking everything. Slaves did not speak. Slaves stayed quiet and survived. But she was not a slave anymore. Ben had given her freedom, had given her a future, and now he was risking everything to protect her. The least she could do was fight alongside him. Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. My name is Lyra. This is my daughter Kira. We were captured by raiders 2 years ago and sold multiple times to different masters. We were beaten and starved and treated like animals. The auction where Ben found us was illegal. They sold over 50 people that day, all of them taken by force from their homes. I can give you names, dates, and locations. I remember everything. The officer stared at her. The crowd fell silent. Even Graff looked surprised that she had spoken. Ben Carter saved our lives, Lyra continued. He bought our freedom legally and gave us a future. If you punish him for that, if you side with slavers and criminals, then you are just as guilty as they are. The Vortillian officer looked between Lyra, Ben, and the growing crowd of humans. Finally he made his decision. I will file a report. The humans' documentation appears to be in order. No arrests will be made today. But this matter is not closed. Graff snarled in anger. This is not over, human. You made powerful enemies today. Ben met his gaze without flinching. Good. They should know I am coming for them. 4 months passed like water flowing downstream, each day bringing small changes that accumulated into something bigger. The Wayward Star became more than just a ship. It became a home, though none of them said the word aloud yet. Lyra transformed their business with an efficiency that amazed Ben. She negotiated contracts with major corporations that Ben had never dared approach before. She found legal loopholes that saved them taxes. She built relationships with station managers and warehouse supervisors, people who controlled the flow of goods across entire sectors. Within 3 months they had more work than they could handle alone. We need to hire crew, Lyra said one evening as they reviewed the month's earnings. The numbers on the screen showed profit margins Ben had only dreamed about before. That means trusting other people on the ship, Ben said carefully. He knew Lyra still struggled with strangers. I know. But we cannot keep refusing contracts because we do not have enough hands. We are losing opportunities. She looked at him with those large, expressive eyes that had slowly lost their constant fear. Besides, I think it is time we stopped hiding from the galaxy. They hired 2 crew members the next week. A young human engineer named Pete who could fix anything, and a quiet Venlari woman named Sala who needed refuge from her own past. Lyra interviewed Sala personally, seeing something of herself in the other woman's cautious movements and haunted eyes. Kira blossomed in the new environment. At 6 cycles old now, she was bright and curious and utterly fearless. She followed Pete around the engine room, asking endless questions about how everything worked. She learned to read using the star charts Ben taught her. She laughed easily and often, the sound like music filling the ship's corridors. But Lyra's wings remained a constant source of pain. Ben watched her wince when she moved too quickly. He saw her take the pain medication she tried to hide. He noticed how she struggled to sleep at night, unable to find a comfortable position. One night, he found her in the galley at 3 in the morning, her face pale and drawn with exhaustion. "The pain is getting worse, is it not?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded, too tired to lie. "The damaged tissue is spreading. One of the wing bones is infected. I can feel it. Let me take you to a doctor. Please. I cannot afford treatment. Wing surgery is expensive, and we need the money for the business." Ben sat down across from her, his expression serious. "Lyra, we have more than enough money. And even if we did not, your health matters more than any business. You matter." "I am afraid," she whispered. "What if they hurt me? What if something goes wrong? What if they decide I am still property and take me away? I will be there the entire time. I will not let anyone hurt you or take you anywhere. I promise." It took another week of gentle persuasion, but Lyra finally agreed. They traveled to a medical station in human-controlled space, one that specialized in treating refugees and trauma survivors. The doctor who examined her was an older human woman named Dr. Sarah Chin who had kind eyes and gentle hands. "The damage is extensive," Dr. Chin explained, showing them scans of Lyra's wings. "Multiple fractures healed incorrectly, scar tissue throughout, and yes, an infection in the left wing bone. But it is not beyond repair. The surgery will take about 6 hours. You will need several weeks of recovery time. Your wings will never be perfect again, but we can eliminate the pain and restore about 60% of your mobility. You might even be able to glide short distances." "How much does it cost?" Lyra asked, her voice small. Dr. Chin named a figure that made Lyra's breath catch. It was more money than she had seen in her entire life before meeting Ben. "We will do it," Ben said immediately. "When can you schedule the surgery?" "Ben, that is too much. I cannot ask you to pay that." "You are not asking. I am offering. Actually, I am insisting." He took her hand, the first time he had touched her without explicit permission. "You deserve to live without pain. You deserve to have your wings back even if they are not perfect. Let me do this for you. Please." Lyra looked at their joined hands, then at his face. She saw only sincerity there, no hidden agenda, no expectation of repayment. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you are family," Ben said simply. "You and Kira both. I know we are not related by blood and I know we have only known each other a few months, but you are the family I choose. That means something to me." Tears filled Lyra's eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself to cry in front of him. "I think of you as family too. I did not want to. I tried not to. But you are the kindest person I have ever known, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore." The surgery happened 3 days later. Ben sat in the waiting room for all 6 hours, refusing to leave even when nurses told him to go rest. When Dr. Chin finally emerged, she was smiling. "The surgery went perfectly. We repaired the bone, removed the infected tissue, and reconstructed the wing membranes using synthetic grafts. She will be in recovery for a few hours, but you can see her soon." When Lyra woke up, groggy and confused from the anesthesia, the first thing she saw was Ben sitting beside her bed. The second thing she noticed was the absence of pain. For the first time in 2 years, her wings did not hurt. "Ben," she whispered. "I am here. The surgery worked. Dr. Chin says you are going to be fine." Fresh tears rolled down her face, but these were different. These were tears of relief and gratitude and something deeper she could not quite name yet. Kira visited that evening, her eyes wide with wonder at the medical facility. She climbed carefully onto her mother's bed and hugged her gently. "Mama, your wings look prettier now. They have silver lines in them." Lyra laughed softly. The synthetic grafts did indeed have a slight metallic sheen where they joined her natural wing membrane. "I suppose they do." Kira looked at Ben, then back at her mother, her young face serious with thought. "Mama, is Ben going to be my new father?" The question hung in the air like a soap bubble, fragile and iridescent. Ben and Lyra looked at each other, both caught completely off guard. Sweetheart, it does not work quite like that, Lyra began carefully. Why not? He takes care of us. He loves us. That is what fathers do, right? Ben knelt down beside the bed so he was at Kira's eye level. Your real father was a brave man who died protecting you and your mother. I could never replace him and I would never try to. But if you want me to be part of your family, I would be honored. Not as a replacement, but as someone new who loves you both very much. Kira seemed to consider this seriously. So like an uncle? But better? Something like that, yes. Lyra reached out and took Ben's hand again. Family is not just about blood, she said softly, speaking to both Kira and Ben. Family is about the people who choose to stand beside you. The people who stay when things are hard. The people who sacrifice for you without expecting anything in return. She squeezed Ben's hand. You have been more family to us than most people who share our blood. If Kira wants to call you father, I will not stop her. You have earned that right. Ben's eyes grew suspiciously bright. I would like that very much. The recovery took 3 weeks. During that time, something subtle but profound shifted between Lyra and Ben. They stopped dancing around their feelings. They stopped pretending their relationship was purely business partnership. They became a unit, a family in every way that mattered. When Lyra was finally cleared to test her wings, Ben and Kira came with her to the medical center's flight chamber. The wings extended carefully, the new grafts gleaming silver against her natural dark blue membranes. They would never glow like they once did, and they bore the scars of her past, but they were hers again. Lyra took a breath and leaped. For 3 glorious seconds, she glided through the air before landing softly on the other side of the chamber. It was not true flight, but it was freedom. It was proof that broken things could heal, that damage did not have to be permanent, that second chances existed if you were brave enough to accept them. When she landed, both Ben and Kira were cheering. Lyra laughed, truly laughed, and knew she was finally home. The embassy world of Haven's Rest lived up to its name. Built by humans specifically as a refuge for those fleeing persecution, it orbited a gentle yellow star and maintained a permanent population of diplomats, aid workers, and survivors rebuilding their lives. Gardens filled with plants from 100 different worlds covered the surface. The air smelled of flowers and hope. Ben stood in front of a mirror in a small embassy room, adjusting his collar for the 3rd time. He wore formal clothes, which felt strange after years of living in work clothes and ship jumpsuits. His hands shook slightly as he tried to straighten his tie. Let me help, Lyra said from the doorway. She wore a flowing dress in deep blue that complemented her wing membranes. The dress had been specially tailored with openings for her wings, which were folded gracefully against her back. The silver grafts caught the light when she moved, creating patterns like stars. She walked over and fixed his tie with practiced ease. You are nervous. I have never adopted anyone before. I do not want to mess up the ceremony. You will not mess up. You are good at everything you set your mind to. She smiled at him, that soft smile that still made his heart skip. Besides, this is just making official what already exists in our hearts. Nothing really changes today except the paperwork. Everything changes today, Ben said quietly. Today I stop being alone in the universe. Today I become part of something bigger than myself. A knock on the door interrupted them. Sala peeked in, wearing formal Venlari attire in shades of green. They are ready for you. The auditorium is full. Half the Venlari community on Haven's Rest came to witness this. Ben felt his nervousness spike. That many people? Your story spread, Sala explained. A human who buys slaves to free them, who risks everything to protect them, who treats a broken Venlari as an equal partner. People want to see the man who did these things. They want to believe that goodness still exists. The embassy auditorium was indeed packed. Hundreds of people filled the seats, representing dozens of species but predominantly human and Venlari. At the front stood a human judge, an older man with white hair and kind eyes. Beside him waited Kira, wearing a new dress and practically vibrating with excitement. As Ben and Lyra walked down the aisle together, the crowd rose to their feet. The gesture of respect overwhelmed Ben. He had never thought of himself as anyone special, just a cargo hauler trying to do the right thing. But he saw tears on many faces, saw hope in their eyes, and understood that this ceremony meant more than just his small family. It represented possibility. The judge smiled warmly as they reached the front. We are gathered today for a joyous occasion. Ben Carter has petitioned to formally adopt Lyra and Kira into his family, granting them his family name and all rights and privileges that come with human citizenship. This is an unusual case, but one that exemplifies the best of what humanity stands for. Mr. Carter, would you like to speak first? Ben cleared his throat and faced the crowd. Public speaking terrified him, but these words needed to be said. A year ago I was alone. I had lost my sister to slavers. I had lost my parents to grief when we could not find her. I flew my ship from station to station doing jobs and making money, but I was not really living. I was just existing, going through the motions, waiting for something I could not name. He looked at Lyra and Kira. Then I saw two people on an auction block. A mother with broken wings holding her daughter, both of them labeled as worthless by people who only saw merchandise. And I realized that this was my chance. Not to save them because I think they ended up saving me, but to do something that mattered. To turn my grief into action. To make sure my sister's story did not end in meaningless tragedy. His voice grew stronger. Lyra and Kira gave my life purpose again. They showed me that family is not about biology or species or shared history. Family is about choice. It is about waking up every day and choosing to stand beside the people you love. It is about sacrifice and trust and building something beautiful from broken pieces. He turned to address them directly. Lyra, you are the strongest person I know. You survived horrors that would have destroyed most people, and you came out the other side still capable of love and trust and hope. You built a successful business from nothing. You gave your daughter a childhood filled with joy despite everything you went through. You inspire me every single day. And Kira, he smiled at the little girl beaming up at him, you taught me how to laugh again. You reminded me that the universe is full of wonder and possibility. You made me want to be a better person, someone worthy of being called your father. He paused, emotion thick in his throat. I cannot replace the family you lost. I cannot undo the pain of your past. But I can promise that from this day forward, you will never face the universe alone. You will always have a home, a name, and someone who fights for you. That is what the name Carter means to me. It means family. It means belonging. And I would be honored to share it with you. The judge nodded, visibly moved. Lyra, would you like to speak? Lyra stepped forward, her wings spreading slightly in a gesture of openness. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the silent auditorium. I used to believe that kindness was a weakness. My captors taught me that cruelty was strength, that compassion was foolishness, that trust would only lead to betrayal. For 2 years, I lived in a universe where the only truth was survival at any cost. Then a human bought me at an auction. He paid money he could barely afford for merchandise that everyone else called worthless. And instead of using me, he freed me. Instead of owning me, he partnered with me. Instead of taking advantage of my desperation, he gave me dignity. She looked at Ben with open affection. Ben showed me that I was wrong about kindness. Kindness is not weakness. It is the greatest strength of all. It takes courage to be compassionate in a cruel universe. It takes strength to help others when you are barely surviving yourself. It takes power to choose mercy over profit. Humans confuse many species in the galaxy. They are not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. But they have something many species lack. They have the ability to see suffering and refuse to accept it. They have the stubborn belief that things can be better, should be better, must be better. And they back up that belief with action even when it costs them everything. Her voice grew passionate. I have met hundreds of species in my travels. Most looked at my broken wings and saw worthless merchandise. But Ben looked at me and saw a person. He looked at Kira and saw a child who deserved a future. That is the difference. That is why I am proud to take the name Carter. Because it represents everything I want to be. Strong enough to be kind. Brave enough to care. Stubborn enough to fight for what is right. The judge wiped his eyes. By the authority granted to me by Earth's government and the Human Council, I declare this adoption legal and binding. Lyra Carter and Kira Carter, welcome to your new family. May you find peace, prosperity, and happiness together. The auditorium erupted in applause. Kira jumped into Ben's arms, hugging him tight. Lyra embraced them both, her wings spreading wide in joy. For the first time in years she felt complete. The reception afterward filled the embassy gardens. Venlari families approached Lyra to share their own stories of rescue and survival. Human diplomats congratulated Ben and quietly asked if he would testify before the Galactic Council about slavery in the frontier territories. He agreed without hesitation. His quiet life was over, but he had never wanted that life anyway. He wanted purpose and now he had it. As the celebration continued, Ben found himself standing with Pete and Sala, watching Lyra speak with a group of young Venlari. She stood tall now, confident in a way she had never been before. Her damaged wings no longer seemed like a mark of shame but like a badge of survival. You changed her life, Sala said quietly. You changed all of our lives. She changed mine too, Ben replied. I was lost before I found them. Now I know exactly where I belong. 3 months later, the wayward star jumped into hyperspace, leaving Haven's Rest behind. The ship had been upgraded with new engines and expanded cargo capacity. The crew had grown to 5 permanent members, all survivors Ben and Lyra had helped along the way. Their business thrived, with contracts stretching across 6 sectors. But more importantly, Ben had become a voice in the fight against slavery. He testified before councils and committees. He gave interviews to news services. He worked with anti-trafficking organizations to identify and shut down illegal auctions. The quiet cargo hauler had become an advocate, and he used his platform without hesitation. Lyra managed it all, keeping the business running while Ben traveled for his advocacy work. She discovered she had a gift for public speaking too, sharing her story with audiences who needed to hear that survival was possible, that healing was real, that better days existed on the other side of trauma. Kira grew up on the ship, learning navigation from her mother and engineering from Pete. At 7 cycles old, she could plot hyperspace jumps and diagnose engine problems. She talked about becoming a starship captain one day, leading rescue missions to help people like her mother once needed help. On a quiet evening, with the ship sailing smoothly through the stars, the 3 Carters gathered in the galley for dinner. It was a simple meal, nothing fancy, but they ate together and laughed together and planned tomorrow together. This was family. This was home. Ben looked at Lyra across the table, at Kira chattering excitedly about a new star system they would visit next week, and felt gratitude so deep it hurt. He had gone to that auction a year ago planning to save 2 lives. Instead, 3 lives had been saved that day, including his own. What are you thinking about? Lyra asked, noticing his expression. Just that I am happy. Truly, completely happy. I did not think I would ever feel this way again. Lyra reached across the table and took his hand. Neither did I. But here we are. Broken pieces made whole. A family built from choice rather than chance. A future we get to create together. Outside the viewport, the stars streamed past in ribbons of light. Somewhere in the galaxy, other people needed help. Other families waited to be saved. Other futures hung in the balance. And the wayward star sailed on, carrying a family who understood that the greatest power in the universe was not weapons or technology or strength, but the simple, radical act of choosing to care. The story of the broken alien mother and the human who gave her his name spread across the galaxy, becoming a legend that inspired thousands. But for Ben, Lyra, and Kira Carter, it was simply their life. It was simply love. And that was more than enough.